All Amish food I ever had always tasted like the barn. Well, that's a strange thing to say. And how do you know what a barn tastes like? I've had a lot of Amish food. I've never had any that tasted like a barn. At least I don't think so. I've eaten food inside a barn before. We used to have church inside our barns. Up in the haymow, we'd have a wooden floor. The floor would be covered with loose hay so that it would keep the dust down. The hay would keep, you'd walk on the hay and you wouldn't disturb the dust would stay underneath the hay. And a lot of times as a kid, I was barefoot, and I would be walking in on that loose hay, sitting there playing with the hay, chewing on it, whatever, during church services. And 9 times out of 10, if your church services were in the haymow, you would also go right back there to have your lunch. They'd set up your lunch tables, and you'd be sitting there eating, homemade bread, butter, peanut butter, jelly, red beets and pickles, coffee and tea, water. That was about the extent of our, food choices that we had in our community. Every now and again, there would be some cheese or bologna added to the list, and that was always a treat. But it took a lot to feed that many people, and not a lot of people did that. It was once every couple of years that you would get a treat like that. Somebody, usually it was somebody that had a lot of money, and they had the money to spare to go buy about 50 pounds of cheese for their church services. But I've also had food in barns before. I remember helping our one neighbor make hay, bale hay one time, and his fields were about probably about a mile away from his house. All day long, we were taking 2 wagons at a time up there, loading them up with hay, bringing them back, and baling it, and then putting it in his barn. And a busy day, and along about supper time, about 6, 7 o'clock, we were still out there, and we were just helping him. I don't know how old I was, probably like 12. And I was just over there helping him, helping him on the farm. He didn't have any boys that were old enough yet. His oldest boy at the time, I do believe, was like 6 or 7, somewhere in there, too young to help. And so we were over there helping him. And his wife brought out these homemade sandwiches, homemade bread, some Miracle Whip, some homemade bologna, and then these big slices of like cucumber with like the skin off, and it's just these thick slices of cucumber. Man, it was so refreshing. And then a big tall glass of chocolate milk. I remember how good that tasted. We were sitting out in the barn, or right outside the barn. You could smell the barn, but it tasted so dang good. Like, I remember eating that, and after going all day, it was a really good meal. And then my mom would also bring us food all the time. She would bring us mashed potatoes, fried chicken, apple pie, and a gallon jug of chocolate milk when we were out in the fields and working late. She would bring us that food, and then we'd sit down under the shade tree. We'd have us a little snack. Thank you.